The wind howled through the trees as Tom drove down the desolate road that led to his family's cabin. It was an eerie night, the moon obscured by dark clouds, casting an otherworldly glow on the surroundings. The road seemed never-ending, with no sign of civilization for miles. To keep himself awake, Tom turned on the radio, but all he could hear was static. Bored and growing increasingly wary, Tom suddenly caught sight of a figure standing on the shoulder of the road. He squinted his eyes, trying to make out who it was. A hitchhiker, in the middle of nowhere. Tom's first instinct was to drive past, but guilt tugged at him. What if they were stranded? Reluctantly, he pulled over and rolled down the window. "Hey, need a lift?" he asked, his voice barely audible above the howling wind. The hitchhiker stepped closer, their face hidden beneath the hood of a tattered black cloak. "Thank you, kind stranger," they replied in a soft, almost ethereal voice. Tom unlocked the passenger door, and the hitchhiker climbed in. As they settled into the seat, a chill ran down Tom's spine. There was something off about this person, something that made his skin crawl. "What brings you out here?" Tom tried to make conversation, his voice trembling slightly. The hitchhiker glanced out the window, their gaze distant. "I am merely passing through, seeking something I have lost," they murmured, their words filled with a melancholic longing. Tom's unease grew, but fearing he was being impolite, he pressed on. "What did you lose? Maybe I could help you find it." The hitchhiker's eyes met Tom's for a moment before they turned their gaze away. "The time has passed for me to retrieve what I seek," they replied cryptically. A shiver ran down Tom's spine. Who was this person, and what were they talking about? Despite his growing anxiety, he found himself unable to pull over and ask them to leave. It was as if he was entranced by their presence. As they drove on, the knot in Tom's stomach tightened. The hitchhiker seemed to exude an air of dread that pervaded the car. Every now and then, Tom stole glances at them, their ghostly presence sending chills down his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a terrible mistake by picking them up. After what seemed like an eternity, the hitchhiker leaned forward, their voice low and trembling. "Please, stop the car. I must get out." Without question, Tom obliged, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and relief. As the hitchhiker stepped out onto the side of the road, they turned to face him. Tom caught a glimpse of their pale, haunting face, their eyes filled with sorrow. "Remember this night, kind stranger, and beware the consequences of your actions," they whispered, disappearing into the darkness. Tom's breath hitched in his throat as he watched the hitchhiker fade from sight. What had he just witnessed? And what did they mean by consequences? His mind was flooded with questions, but before he could ponder them further, a sudden gust of wind shattered the eerie silence. The following morning, Tom woke in his cabin, unsure if the events of the previous night were real or merely a product of his tired mind. Trying to push the encounter from his thoughts, he got ready for a fishing trip at a nearby lake. As he drove down the road, memories of the hitchhiker flooded back. He shook his head, trying to clear his mind, but the feeling of unease lingered. It wasn't until he reached the lake and saw a news article that the color drained from his face. The headline read, "Mysterious death haunts town as hitchhiker found dead on the side of the road." The accompanying picture sent a chill through his entire body. It was the hitchhiker he had picked up. Authorities had found their lifeless body, devoid of any identification. The realization hit Tom like a ton of bricks. The phantom hitchhiker he had encountered had been a ghost, warning him of the impending consequences. He sank to his knees, overwhelmed by guilt and fear, haunted by the knowledge that his actions had inadvertently led to someone's demise. From then on, Tom vowed never to overlook the warning signs, never to ignore his intuition. He couldn't change what had happened, but he could strive to be a better judge of character. And so, as he drove back to his cabin that day, he couldn't help but feel that he was being watched, a reminder that some choices can never be undone. One more story you didn't expect. The night was dark and stormy as Michael drove down the desolate road. He was returning home after a business trip, tired and longing for his bed. The rain pounded relentlessly against the windshield, the sound echoing through the silent night. As Michael navigated the unfamiliar road, a flicker of movement caught his eye. He squinted through the rain, attempting to make out the figure on the side of the road. A hitchhiker. An odd sight, considering the late hour and the desolation of the area. His kind heart whispered the need to help, but a wave of unease washed over him. He hesitated for a moment, the internal struggle between compassion and intuition waging war within him. Ultimately, compassion won, and he pulled over. The hitchhiker, drenched from head to toe, slumped into the passenger seat. Michael noted the intense glare of their eyes in the rearview mirror, an almost haunting gaze that sent a shiver down his spine. He cleared his throat nervously and introduced himself. "I'm Michael. Where can I drop you off?" The hitchhiker didn't respond, merely staring out of the window, as if drowning in their own thoughts. Michael found the silence unsettling, so he turned up the radio to fill the void. But no matter what channel he tuned into, only static filled the car. Unease settled deep within Michael's bones. He fumbled for his phone, hoping for any kind of signal, but the screen remained blank. Panic crept into his chest, causing his heart to race. The road ahead stretched out endlessly, devoid of any signs of life or civilization. Time passed, and the hitchhiker never spoke a word. The storm raged on, matching the turmoil growing within Michael. He reached a fork in the road, unsure of which path to take. Left or right? The hitchhiker's glare intensified, as if trying to communicate something. Against his better judgment, Michael took the left turn. The road narrowed, the trees encroaching on the asphalt like silent sentinels. The atmosphere grew heavier with each passing mile, laden with an indescribable darkness. Abruptly, the hitchhiker finally spoke, their voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Stop." Michael obliged and pulled over, relieved to have a momentary respite from the suffocating atmosphere. The hitchhikers stepped out onto the rain-soaked ground, their figures slowly fading into the darkness. Confusion swirled within Michael's mind as he watched the hitchhiker dissolve into the night. Had he imagined it all? He turned his gaze back to the empty passenger seat, finding a sense of relief mingled with regret. Suddenly, a glimmer of understanding dawned upon him. The hitchhiker was more than a mere apparition. They were a harbinger of fate, a messenger from the other side, warning him of the fork in the road he had just chosen. Driven by newfound determination, Michael turned the car around, his foot pressing on the gas pedal with renewed purpose. The storm raged on, the wind howling in protest, but he wouldn't let the forces of nature deter him. Hours later, Michael arrived at the correct turn, his eyes widened with disbelief as he saw the smoldering wreckage of a car. It had careened off the road, the impact enough to ignite an inferno. The scene was a chilling reminder of the path he had avoided. Shaken to his core, Michael thanked the phantom hitchhiker, their ethereal presence still lingering in his thoughts. They had guided him away from a tragic fate, a twist of providence that he couldn't comprehend. Days turned into weeks, and Michael struggled to rationalize his experience. He couldn't shake the feeling that the hitchhiker was watching, hidden somewhere in the periphery of his life. The event had changed him, leaving him with a deeper understanding of the mysteries that lay beyond the veil of the mundane. Eventually, Michael stumbled upon an old newspaper article detailing a fatal accident on the road he had traversed that fateful night. The victims were a couple returning from their honeymoon. Their lives were mercilessly cut short. It was then that he saw a photograph, and his heart nearly stopped. In that faded image, he recognized the ghostly visage of the hitchhiker. The story of the phantom hitchhiker spread like wildfire, captivating the imaginations of those who dared to listen. The enigmatic figure became the subject of whispered tales and late-night discussions, a specter that haunted the minds of all who bore witness to the inexplicable. But for Michael, the phantom hitchhiker became more than a legend. They were a reminder of second chances, of the thin line that separates life and death. And he, forever grateful, carried their presence in his heart, a permanent reminder of the night fate walked alongside him on a desolate road.